One of the biggest challenges in learning how to code is building your own projects. होता ये है कि आपको शायद कोर्सेज मिल जाते हैं इजीली यूट्यूब से या कोर्सेरा से यूडेमी से एंड you start building the projects that are provided by the instructor, and that goes on for a while and you feel like you're making good progress. But maybe at the end of the course, when you start to create your own project, an original idea, you realize that it is really difficult. Uh, and a lot of people revert back to tutorial. आपने एक tutorial कर लिया, अब आप दूसरे tutorial पे जाएंगे, दूसरे course पे जाएंगे, and that keeps going on and on. So this phenomena is actually quite common and is known as tutorial hell. So I received a message recently by a user on Reddit. Um, this person is going to stay anonymous. And this person has asked me that, hey, I'm learning full-time web development through through online resources. And I seem to be stuck in tutorial hell. I cannot start making projects because I just don't know where to start. I can code along a tutorial and do all problems myself, but when it comes to a project, I cannot come up with an original idea. Also, I'm a dropout, which makes it really hard for me to enter the tech field. I'm very well aware I'll have to grind a lot. Do you have any advice for me? I need to get a job as soon as possible. So I want to divide my response into two categories. सबसे पहला होएगा just about projects in general, right? And next would be about getting a job. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. Okay. मेरा ज़्यादा emphasis मैं projects पे दूंगा, but I'm going to talk about jobs as well. So first, you need to understand why people get stuck in tutorial hell and how do you get out of it. So from my experience, uh, my own personal experience, as well as what we have seen with other Moocable members, the biggest reason people get stuck in tutorial hell is because due to a lack of self-confidence. Confidence. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say you just started learning how to code, and when you start learning and you start building something on your own, there is a voice inside of you that says and tries to convince you कि आप ये नहीं कर सकते हैं, या फिर आप maybe आपका CS में background भी नहीं है, right? The user who posted this query, this is just my analysis. Maybe there is a voice inside of you that tells you that you don't have a college degree and you can't go about building this project on your own. This is quite common, and it is part of the learning journey, no matter what, whether you are learning coding or any other skill. So that voice keeps you hindered. It keeps you from setting out and actually learning coding or any other skill. So that's the first reason people get stuck in tutorial hell. कि लोग जब आपको खुद का कुछ प्रोजेक्ट करना है ना कोर्स से हटके, it requires a sense of competence and confidence जो शुरुआत में काफी कम होता है लोगों में. Okay. The second reason why people get stuck in tutorial hell is because courses and tutorials, they give you a sense of progress. They make you feel competent. Okay, so feeling of progress, competence. Okay, so what do I mean by that? It is very easy to follow a course or a tutorial and build the projects जो भी course में दिया गया है, rather than do something of your own. Uh, when you are following a course, all the instructions are laid down in front of you. You just have to follow them. But when you build your own project, there are no instructions, there are no criteria, there are no parameters. And due to the lack of such parameters, you get scared to even start. And so you revert back to the tutorial cycle. Instead of going and building your own project, you start with another course. So just to give you a simple example, let's say you covered the essentials of front-end web development, and now you want to build your own project, but then you don't want to actually start with an original idea and build from scratch. And so you convince yourself कि यार मैं एक काम करता हूँ, मैं एक advanced कोर्स कर लेता हूँ web development का ही. So you go back to another course and the whole cycle continues. Now, to be fair, uh, courses, obviously, they do make you competent. There is a sense of progress, right? Real progress. You are learning something, but you need to understand that it has a ceiling. Okay, so I'm going to call it progress ceiling. What I mean by that is when you start learning an online course or a tutorial, एक slope होता है progress का, and you keep learning stuff. But after a certain point, you just reach a plateau and now you're not learning anything new. So when you reach that point, taking up another course is actually counterproductive and you're just wasting your time. So इसलिए like that whole the second point and the third point are important. Like yes, online courses से आपको progress मिल रहा है, but only up to a certain point. Uske baad, you need to get out of that cycle and actually start building your project. Uh, and I think the last reason why we fall for the tutorial hell is because we like hand holding, right? This is especially true for Indian students. कि हमें सब कुछ like we want instructors or teachers to provide us with all the with everything, right? With all the just हम जब 10th में थे या 12th में थे, studying from textbooks wasn't enough. We wanted to study from workbooks as well, or we wanted a question bank. We wanted like जो भी हमें material सामने से मिलता है that makes our job easier, we tend to stick to that. So this might have worked while you were in, I don't know, junior college or in your early academic life, but it's not gonna work from now on. So these are the four big reasons why people tend to, or people get stuck in tutorial hell. Okay, now talking about how to get out of it. Okay, so सबसे पहला एडवाइस मैं दूंगा वो ये है कि get inspired, don't copy. Okay, so get inspired and don't copy. What do I mean by that? When you start learning a course, you're obviously following the instructor. And बहुत सारे courses में instructor खुद videos में projects बनाता है. या फिर आप किसी और के प्रोजेक्ट्स को देखते हो, गेटअप पे देखते हो, कोई दूसरे वेबसाइट पे देखते हो, एंड यू are looking at their projects, you're looking at what they build. Now, this by itself is not a bad practice. In fact, it's a good practice. But the idea is that you need to get inspired from these projects and not just copy paste their work. Now, copy pasting is that deserves its own video. Maybe I'll cover it in like later on. कि exactly copy paste करना सही है कि नहीं computer science में या programming में, because it is quite common, and again to some extent it is useful, right? But for this video, all I'm going to say is that if you are stuck with lack of ideas, you can look at someone else's work, but don't just copy paste or create another replica of it. Rather, get inspired and try to come up with a derivative. You don't need to come up with an original idea per se. You can create a derivative idea. अगर अगर फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर किसी ने एक वेब प्रोजेक्ट बनाया है अबाउट क्रिकेट, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, maybe it works with some API to fetch data regarding cricket players. You can do that with some other sport with another set of API. So जो core idea था वो same था, but now you're working with another set of data and it's your own idea. That's a it's a good place to begin with. But don't just copy paste someone else's work mindlessly. The second advice is it's quite like I always advise this to everyone, like on Moocable, start with small projects. A reason why we get frozen or we get anxious about building stuff is because हमारे जो ideas होते हैं, सबसे पहला जो idea होता है वो हमेशा काफी बड़ा होता है, right? Maybe you want to build a full stack application with 10 features. And while that sounds like a great application, you need to understand that you are just one person. And maybe you're just learning how to code. And so this is not a great idea to start with. If you're an experienced developer and you're very competent and you know about time management and project management, then yes, at that stage, you should work on bigger projects like a full stack application with numerous features. But if you're just getting started, start with small projects that take you just a few hours and even less if you want to. So I think such projects are covered in tutorials. That's why you have such coding assignments and exercises जो थोड़े से आपको मंटेन लगेंगे या इतने important नहीं लगेंगे, but when you complete those small projects, that gives you the confidence to build bigger projects tomorrow. So select one project that might take you just a weekend to build and complete it end to end, and उसके बाद जाके आप एक नए प्रोजेक्ट पे काम करो. It's better to work on one simple idea than work on 3 or 4 complex idea and make no progress. So एक बड़ा query ये था that you are stuck with like you don't know which idea to work on. Okay, so a simple like a heuristic is to work on ideas that you find cool. Okay, you are in the learning phase of your professional journey. And this is the phase where you don't have to worry about things like revenue or user engagement or whether this idea is practical or not, right? This is your personal project. Be as creative as you want, build something funky if you want, doesn't matter. This project is all about you. And even if the idea is not practical, you build something that has no relevance in the real world. You get a place to implement and execute everything that you've learned. That's the point behind these projects. Okay. Let's say you build a website that is completely, I don't know, a funky website, जिसका कुछ relevance नहीं है real world में. But it's something that you are really passionate about. Passion is good because that is the thing that will keep you, that will first get you started, and also the thing that will keep you motivated to keep building and to complete the entire project. So yeah, find something that you find cool. Now, obviously, that's subjective. And yeah, like you don't have to reinvent the wheel again. Just find a derivative idea if you want. Um, oh, fourth is learn how to Google and study documentation. So, learning how to Google and learning how to refer and study documents is such an important part of being a programmer or being a developer. Okay. अगर आप फर्स्ट टाइम ये कर रहे हो, फर्स्ट टाइम कोडिंग कर रहे हो, this might seem wrong even because I've heard that by some people ki, is this even allowed or is this right? And the answer is yes. This is quite common. Even experienced developers, experienced programmers refer documentation and they Google stuff, even simple stuff as syntax. So, but it's a practice and it's a skill, and you need to learn how to refer documentation effectively. सिर्फ पढ़ने से कुछ नहीं होता है, आपको वो डॉक्यूमेंटेशन को रेफर करना है एंड यू हैव टू यूज देयर स्निपेट्स और देयर एग्जांपल्स इन योर ओन प्रोजेक्ट. That itself is a really crucial skill in programming. So right from your first project, start referring documentation. The fifth idea is actually complementary to the second idea, which is uh, progressive overload. Now, this term is actually used in weightlifting and fitness. So, progressive overload, yes. Progressive overload, the idea काफी simple है that you start with a project that is simple and feasible, and then over time you increase the difficulty or the complexity of that project. Okay, so like I said, progressive overload is complementary to the second point. The key point behind progressive overload is that the idea or the project that you work on currently should be feasible. अगर आपका सबसे पहला आइडिया ही काफी डिफिकल्ट है, एक तो प्रोजेक्ट होने नहीं वाला है. Secondly, you're gonna feel discouraged to even, you know, start with another project. So, and the second point is that once you complete that first project, आपका जो second project है, it needs to be more difficult than the first project. So every time you finish a project, the next project needs to be more difficult. You need to be in a position of feasible discomfort, a point where you are out of your comfort zone, but not so much कि आप वो project बना ही नहीं सकते हो. So finding that key spot takes a little bit of time and practice. But once you build your first project, that'll give you a good idea as to where you stand with your skills. Okay, and the sixth idea is perfection is your enemy. Okay, so हो सकता है कि आपके पास एक सेल्फ प्रोजेक्ट का आइडिया है and maybe you have just started working on it, but every time you reach a milestone, you feel like this project or this feature is not good enough, or it needs to be a bit more fancy, or you need to work on the aesthetics, right? This is preventing you from completing your project. Now, I'm not saying that जो भी दिमाग में आता है कैसे ना कैसे आप बना के सिर्फ publish कर दो. Obviously, your website or your product needs to be good. It needs to in startups and software, we call this the MVP, minimum viable product. And it's actually a good practice even for learners that your projects, at least when you get started, just build an MVP, a minimum viable product, the feasible solution at this moment. और जब आपका पहला iteration बन जाता है and you're satisfied uh, with it, but you still think that it can be improved, then you can go back to your project and work again. So instead of working on your project in just one go, how about you work on your project in cycles or iterations? maybe in your first cycle you're just working on one web page or just one feature. आप वो पूरे के पूरे फीचर को कंप्लीट करो, वो पूरे वेब पेज को कंप्लीट करो, एंड देन यू कैन मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट iteration with the next set of features or improvements. So these are the points or practices for getting out of tutorial help. Next, I want to talk about getting a job, and specifically about this user and his or her background. Okay, so our user is a college dropout and is looking to get hired, get a job in tech. So let's be honest, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Getting a job without a degree is difficult. And you're gonna, as you said, you're gonna have, like, you will be grinding a lot, but it is possible. Okay. And we know people जिन्होंने degrees के बिना भी job हासिल किया है. But if I want to lay down uh, a few practices, a few points, the first thing I would mention is the bad news, too many graduates. So when you are looking for a job, आज जब आप market में जाओगे, you will be competing against lakhs of students and freshers, right, who have college degrees. Some of them have degrees in computer science, or they have a degree in IT, and other students have degrees in engineering or BCA, and then you have students who come from a non-CS background, but they too are opting for an IT job, but they have a college degree. So that's the bad news. The good news is that even though there are lakhs of graduates, there is still a dire need for talent. So you have lakhs of graduates, but most of them are not employable. And so if you have a good profile, if you have a good portfolio, you stand a chance in competing against these graduates. So take it in a positive way and try to ensure that when it comes to skills and competence, you outshine them. Okay. The third tip is start with freelancing. Okay. Now, if you apply for jobs directly at MNCs and established companies, I would say 99.99% chance or 99.99% times your application is gonna get rejected, because MNCs and big companies have like such criteria, right? I'm sure a lot of them have criteria that you need to at least hold a bachelor's degree. So वहाँ पर ही आप you're gonna get rejected early on. On the other hand, when it comes to freelancing, there is no limitations or such criteria, right? All you need to know is you need to be skilled, you need to be competent, and you need to deliver stuff on time. Now, freelancing itself is another topic that maybe I'll cover in another video. But for now, my go-to advice रहेगा that you start with freelancing. And the good thing about freelancing is that you can start by getting clients. Uh, you can start working with individual clients, not with some companies or agencies. And once you have acquired a few clients, you can then target an agency. आप कोई एजेंसी को अप्रोच कर सकते हो, या फिर कोई एजेंसी आपको सामने से अप्रोच कर सकती है saying that they came across your profile and they want to hire you. And now through that agency you are working with another client. अब होता ये है कि जो आपका एजेंसी वाला क्लाइंट है, दिस कुड बी अ कंपनी or an organization, and if they like your work, a lot of times these clients directly contact the developer or the designer, and they offer the designer or the developer a job for the client's organization. So that's a really neat way of getting hired in an established company. Obviously, it takes it's not easy and काफी steps आते हैं बीच में, but the point is that it is viable, it is doable, right? The fourth advice is work at a startup. Now, मेरा advice रहेगा that you stick to freelancing for now and not for startups. The reason being that there are so many variables that you have to think of when you apply at startups. Okay. सबसे पहली बात है that yes, startups again, just like with freelancers, they are not super concerned about your academic background. You can work as a developer or as an engineer without holding a CS degree. But you need to be competent, you need to deliver stuff, you need to produce results. And the reason I'm not leaning a lot towards the startup route is because when you work at a startup, you will be wearing multiple hats at the same time, and it can be quite stressful. Now, if you are someone who likes that kind of a challenge, then yes, maybe you can go for a startup. But again, uh, it's going to be tough. Next, you need to be careful about which kind of startup you're working for, because a lot of startups, they like within their first year they fail. So aisa na ho ki you have like invested all that time and energy in this one startup, rejected all the other offers, and now within 6 months this company is shutting down. So इसलिए मैं कहूंगा कि आप सबसे पहले फ्रीलांसिंग से शुरू करो. Get your first few clients. You will understand, what goes behind the uh, screen, and what exactly, what are the things that clients look for, and how do you talk to people, right? How do you conduct business? ये भी आपको सब सीखने मिलेगा. After a while, you can choose to decide. You can like decide whether you want to work at an agency or at a startup. And once you get your first job, then things will get a lot easier. Okay. So I hope this video was useful, not just to the user, but to anyone who is in a similar position. Uh, Again, watching this video by itself is not going to be useful. Make sure that you gain something out of it and actually implement it in your learning or your job.